right. Well, welcome back. This is Queens of the Paddock, an F1 podcast. My name is Alex,
And I'm Courtney.
and we're
And
back again today.
yeah,
We're going to be talking about the Azerbaijan Grand Prix in Baku,
I
which I'm
know.
so excited.
I know. I feel like
It's been forever.
I feel like we had a whole nother break again. And it's like making me
Yeah.
crazy. Like not break, but like off season. I'm like, what's going on?
Yeah, I know. It's like you get this little taste with the first three races. We waited for months, then it starts, and you get three races, then it's like break time again.
Yeah. And then before we know it, we're gonna have
So,
summer break again.
I know. I know.
Gosh.
So many breaks.
Ugh, too much for me. So
But I think, like, I don't know. Hopefully, it'll be good for the drivers to get a break and for the teams, and
yeah.
everyone will come back refreshed and ready to
Hopefully
go.
hopefully Ferrari has figured themselves out and
Yes.
hopefully this is the break they needed to restart, you know.
Yeah, 100%. We can
So,
manifest that.
oh, I know. For real, for real. So, well, I guess starting out before we get into the details of the track and everything, or I guess do you want to
Hmm.
do that first? But I'm super excited because I've got a lot of information on the new sprint race details.
Yeah, no, let's start out with that. So this is going to be our first sprint race
Yes,
of the year.
yes. So, yes,
Super exciting.
super exciting. And so, with that, I guess let me give a little bit of background on sprint racing, right? So, the sprint
Yeah.
race is essentially a mini 17, usually about 17 lap race that
Hmm.
essentially dictates the order for the Grand Prix on Sundays. So,
Hmm.
it's a lot of fun. There's a lot of, I guess, things that can go wrong because they have a full start just like, any other Grand
Yeah,
Prix. So it's almost like you get two races in one weekend kind
for
of
sure.
vibe that we
You know
going.
what I'm super excited about is COTA this year is a sprint race weekend.
Yeah, so that's
So I feel like we're getting maximum like bang for our buck
oh, thousand
at that
percent,
race.
1000%. Because that's one of the big things I kind of wanted to bring up of the changes of this year.
Hmm.
So they've actually doubled the number of sprint races from last year to this
Hmm.
year. So last year we had
I didn't
three.
realize it was double.
Yeah, it's
Wow.
double. So last year we
Oh
had
my God.
three. This year we have
Hmm.
six. Baku is one. The Austrian Grand Prix, Red Bull,
Hmm.
the Red Bull Ring, that's one. Belgium Spa is a sprint race this
Hmm.
year. Qatar, Coda, and then San Paulo is the last one that we have
In Brazil.
in
Yeah,
Brazil.
nice.
So there's six, and I didn't really know this because I last year there was three, and I was really into them, and I thought it was a lot of fun. I didn't know this is a real new thing that they started doing. So the first sprint race was actually in Silverstone in July of 2021.
Really? I didn't realize it was that new
Yeah,
either.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So it's not brand new, but
I mean, just
relatively,
a couple years.
yeah. So
Yeah.
I mean, it's a big change, I feel like, for the
Hmm.
teams and the drivers and stuff like that. And so kind of recap to the original first, whatchamacallit, sprint race. So back then, Max and Lewis were kind of battling it out. I think that's the first year Max really started to change things around really for Red Bull,
Hmm.
in the more recent years. And so
Hmm.
on the first lap, I mean, I watched a little 15, 20 minute recap of it today,
Hmm.
and they were going back and forth that whole first lap. It was so good. It kind of reminded me of, oh God, what was the race a couple weeks ago where it was the same thing with Alonso and I can't remember who it was. Alonso and somebody else, and it was just
Back and
pedaled.
forth, and they kept on trading spots.
Yeah, 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 exactly.
Yeah.
So,
So entertaining.
oh, I know. So pretty much, it was a battle between Max and Hamilton, right? For the most part. And then at the start of it, which I actually thought was kind of cool, so because it's such a short race and they're trying to put so much pressure, I guess, on the tires and things like that. Max's
Mhm.
brakes were actually on fire at the beginning of
Oh
the
my
race. So
god.
when you watch the start, like he's got like fire shoots coming out of his front left
And he
tire.
kept going?
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, there was nothing wrong with it, but he was
Right.
just trying to
They
heat
just
up
got
the.
really overheated.
Yeah, he was trying to heat it up that much because I think he wanted to have like a really good like jump off the start and stuff.
Yeah.
So, so that was one kind of crazy thing. I was like, oh, that's kind of interesting. And then the other thing is on lap 5, Perez, I
Mhm.
don't know what happened, but he just lost it and he threw himself into the wall and ended up starting the Grand Prix in last place because of that.
Ooh.
I
Yeah.
know. So, and then of course, Max took pole that day, but it was a good for the first sprint race. It was like pretty interesting.
Yeah, that's exciting.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So,
Well, see, that one was so exciting, so that's probably why they decided to like keep on going with it. And then just I feel like every sprint race that I've seen so far, like watching F1 has been like super exciting because they're very eager and like just,
mhm.
pushing everything to try to get that good spot for the
Yeah.
race. So it's like it makes it very exciting.
Oh, yeah, 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 for sure, for sure. So,
Mhm.
so with that, there has been some changes from
Mhm.
2022 to 2023 on the sprint races. First, like we said, double the amount of sprint races in the season. But the other kind of big thing that has changed on it is the cost cap associated with the sprint races. So,
Oh.
yeah, in 2022, the cost cap was $150,000 per race weekend allowed, and that's because they're running the cars extra than compared to like previous seasons, you know? And then
Mhm.
also there was an additional $100,000 cost cap allotment if one of your cars was damaged in the sprint race. So you got
Oh.
an extra like cost budget for your season
Interesting.
because
So,
of that.
I have a question. So like does that then entice people to purposely potentially damage their cars to get that
No,
extra
because
$100,000
no,
if
because
they don't?
I think
Okay, go ahead.
I have to look more into this, and I would assume like if your damage is 50,000, then you only get 50, right? I don't think you can
Okay,
take
okay,
that
okay, okay.
100 and just like allocate it towards whatever you want. The other thing you have to think about though is on average, like last year, when you think about Haas and what Schumacher
Mixed mixed crashes.
mixed crashes, on average, what was it? I think you talked about it.
Like half a million or something.
Yeah, a half a million
And they came out and said that he pretty much cost them like $2.5 million
exactly.
over the course of the season.
And that's just in races. So can you imagine, like, I mean, you're only getting $100,000 if you wreck
Okay,
it into a
yeah. I
wall.
I retract my statement.
Yeah. So it's like kind of like one of those things where you're just like, that's quite a bit, you know?
Right.
So
Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, makes sense. Makes sense.
yeah, yeah. So this year, the big change is again in
Mhm.
the cost cap area.
Mhm.
So rather than last year it being $150,000 per race weekend, it's now $300,000. And then also they still have the $100,000 per car if they are damaged, like in a wreck or
Mhm.
whatever, throughout the
Mhm.
race weekend. So yeah, I thought that was
Interesting.
like kind of cool. And then, of course, you know, with sprint races, they're only 62 miles or 100 kilometers. So
Mhm.
usually equates to about 17 laps. Like I think when I did the math for Baku, it's going to be just, I think 17 laps is exactly
Mhm.
that. And then what happens also is you lose one of the practice sessions because the practice
Yeah,
session becomes qualifying for the sprint race.
for the sprint race.
Yeah.
Right.
So,
So, okay, and I was reading about this, and this is where I was telling you, like, when I was researching that this afternoon, I was a little bit confused because I read they are changing the qualifying format itself to be slightly shorter. So like Q1,
But
instead of being 15, it'll
mhm.
be 10 minutes.
But
And same thing with Q2.
I
Oh,
was
go ahead.
reading that also, but the thing I
Mhm.
saw with that was I think there's specific races that they're testing this new qualifying out on. It's not
Mm.
every single race
Okay,
that's
so
going to
that's
be that
not
way.
going to be got it. Yeah, because I read it was Q1 10 minutes, Q2 10 minutes, and then Q3 you only get one shot.
Yes.
So that's rough. Like
Yes.
you go out and you do your fast lap.
Mhm. Yep. So I need
That
to
would make it really interesting.
Oh, absolutely. I need to read more on it and maybe editing
Mhm.
Alex can look into it on which races. I think
Hello, this is Editing Alex, and I'm here with a little update. So, as we get into the conversation about the changes for sprint races in 2023, we're kind of speculating at this point because we filmed this episode about a week before the official changes were released by F1. So, now that the official changes have been released and I'm editing this episode, I needed to give you guys an Editing Alex update. So, for 2023, the sprint race regulations have changed slightly from last year and the years previous. So we are going to have two different qualifying sessions this weekend. So you'll see the actual qualifying on Friday, and that determines the race grid, starting grid for the actual race on Sunday. And then on Saturday, we'll have a sprint shootout. So that is going to determine the grid starting positions for the actual sprint race on Saturday. And the changes with that qualifying is that the qualifying segments will be shorter. So you'll see Q1 is 12 minutes, Q2 is 10 minutes, and Q3 is 8 minutes. And during each session, they need to use different tires. So they'll use medium tires for Q1 and Q2 and softs for Q3. So just a little bit of a change from what we're used to seeing in sprint races prior to this year. So typically in years past, the sprint race results would kind of dictate the starting grid, not kind of. They would definitely would dictate the starting grid of the actual Grand Prix on Sundays. And now the actual race results from the sprint will not change anything for the actual Grand Prix. They still get points for the sprint race, but it doesn't really affect the actual start of the Grand Prix on Sunday. So that is all. Thank you. Listen to us speculating and just making assumptions. And yeah, thank you. Bye.
I
Yeah.
think they've already decided which races, and I don't know. Baku might be one of them.
I think Baku was one of them. And then also, did you read about like the new sprint format? Okay, so we talked about there you lose that practice session,
Yes.
but then even further, they're going to drop the Saturday practice session. So you would have basically Friday practice and then wait, hold on.
No, no, no. So I actually looked this up because I was curious on it. So it's going to
Yeah.
be
See,
practice.
I'm all kinds of confused
So practice one and qualifying are on day one, so April 28th
on Friday.
on
Right.
Friday. Practice two will be right before the sprint race on April 29th, Saturday.
Uh-huh.
And then the
Uh-huh.
Grand Prix is Sunday. So
Gotcha.
qualifying is going to be moved like it's not like before you know how you had three practice rounds then qualifying.
Yeah.
Now they've stuck
Yeah.
qualifying in between the practice
On
rounds.
Friday.
Yes.
Yes. Okay. Gotcha.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and then see like my question was when I was reading through all of this and I didn't get like a real definitive answer, but I feel like that second practice session is like qualifying for the sprint race.
No.
Okay.
So there's like the on day one is the
Uh-huh.
second time they come out is truly qualifying for the sprint race. And then the next day they get to have one practice run before the actual sprint race. So it's almost
Uh-huh.
reversing like the way it is now. You know how it's
The
always
way that
been
it goes.
practice
Yeah.
and then qualifying and then sprint race. Now it's going to be practice, qualifying, practice, sprint race.
Man, that's crazy.
I know.
But then I
I had
also
to look at
read
all of the schedule
the
on.
time sessions. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, and so that was why I was confused too, because I looked at all the time sessions
Mhm.
and it was like that, but then I had read some article which like it seemed like it was reputable because it was ESPN F1 and it
Yeah.
was their like F1 correspondent. His name is Nate. I forget his last name. But anyways, I had read that and it was talking about these different things. And then the other thing too was that like how you were saying with the sprint race, like whenever whatever your finishing places are
Mhm.
throughout the sprint race, that's how you start on Sunday.
Yep.
And so one of the changes that this article was talking about was that the sprint race, it gives you points, like the top 8 people that finish,
Yep.
they get points
Mhm.
for the championship, but then it wasn't going to affect your starting spot on Sunday because they had like a separate qualifying on Friday that was for the race. And then the sprint race was
Oh.
like its standalone thing.
Well, maybe we're all misreading it. I guess we won't really know until like the day of
we yeah. Yeah, but I know, and it's funny because I tried to like because I was getting confused as I was reading these things and looking at the schedule,
Mhm.
and then I tried to look up like different like a YouTube to like explain it to me
Yeah.
with like visuals because again I'm super visual, like I need to like see a schedule
Yeah.
before I'm like okay, but I didn't find anything, so then I was like,
Oh, you didn't see that? So
is this ES?
I went on
Well,
F1's actual
no,
website
I
and I
saw
found that
that.
schedule. Okay.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, which is what we're talking like that's what you said, the
Yeah.
schedule is how you described it
Mhm.
there, but then this article was saying something different. So,
There was
jury's out. I don't know.
well, now my question would be is when was that article published? Because
It was
I read a
oh, go ahead.
lot of different things on like they were going back and forth on trying to make the
Mhm.
decision on what was going to finally happen for this year's thing. So I wonder
Gotcha.
if he that article was almost like what was being
Before
talked about before the
mm,
FIA made final decisions on
decisions on
yeah.
it.
But yeah,
Yeah, you're probably right. I thought it was like from the beginning of April of like this year though. But
maybe.
okay, we're going to have to get some definitive
Yeah.
on this and we'll pipe it in here. But one thing I do want to like comment on with all of that is that so like removing one of those practice sessions in lieu of getting like the sprint race and all of that, I think this is just another sign that points to like practice sessions are going to be removed.
I don't know
I don't
though.
know about 100%,
I don't think the
but I
teams will
think
sign
there
off
we'll
on
start
that.
to see them. Well, and what's funny is too, so we talked about this before the Australia race because that's when Stefano Domenicali was kind of like throwing around comments about that.
Mhm.
And I remember us talking about it, wondering like, what would the drivers have to say about that and the teams have to say about that. And during some of those press conferences, they asked that question
Mhm.
and everyone was like in favor except for Max Verstappen. He was the only
Oh.
one that was like, "I don't like that." Of course he doesn't
Well,
like it.
well, yeah. I feel like there should be at least one practice round because you have to think about it.
Right.
Some of these drivers have never driven that track before. Like,
Yeah.
remember who was it? I think it was Oscar in Saudi or not maybe not Saudi. Was it the first race of the year? I don't think
I
he
no,
had
you're right. I
ever
think it
driven
was
that
Saudi
track.
because it was a newer track and then he hadn't like they started racing there after he was done with F
Too.
Oh no, it was Nick. It was Nick DeVries.
Okay. That's
It was
right.
Nick DeVries.
I was like, I
Yeah.
remember one of the rookies, and I feel like from that could be a pretty dangerous, like from a
Yeah.
safety perspective of not giving anyone any chance to familiarize themselves with a track. I
Mhm.
mean,
Mhm.
but granted, you have simulations now, so like you can use the simulation,
Right.
but I feel like
Yeah, but
it's
that's
very
not the
different.
same.
Yeah, but
I feel like that would be super hard. Um, I wrote down a quote though from Fred Vasseur
hmm
talking about this, like the topic of eliminating some of the practice sessions. And so he says he's for it, and he feels like in the spirit of like making the sport more entertaining that they should get rid of some of the practice sessions because, and this is his quote, if you watch football, you're not watching the session on Wednesday when they are training in the stadium. And we are probably the only sport where they are putting the training session on TV.
yeah, but the thing is, it's about the whole weekend. For me, like
Yeah.
as a fan, like I love seeing the whole weekend. Like we had a
Mhm.
great time watching. I mean, maybe they don't televise it. Maybe that's an option, but what you're paying to go to these events and stuff,
Yeah.
it's the whole weekend wrapped up in one, not just
Right.
like football, it's just that day and that game. You know?
Mhm. Yeah. No, I agree with you. I think like they should definitely have events like Friday, Saturday leading up into the Grand Prix. But if they were like sprint races on Saturday, I think I'd be for that.
I know, I was just thinking, I was like,
Or like more qualifying sessions. Like
unless
those are exciting.
Oh, well, unless you do Friday qualifying, Saturday sprint race, Sunday Grand Prix. But
Yeah.
man, that would get real
That
interesting.
would be action packed.
Well, and you would have to increase the cost cap because if you
Yeah.
really think about it, like that's way more like not intense driving, but kind of, you know what I mean? Like
I mean, yeah.
the likelihood of you to spin out and really wreck your car during practice rounds is a lot less because most people aren't like
They're
pushing
being
it.
more careful.
Yeah, they're not
Yeah.
pushing it like a qualifying or a sprint race or the Grand Prix,
Right.
you know?
Right, right, right.
So I
Right.
don't know. That'd be interesting. I mean, I could get on board
We'll
with that,
see.
but
Yeah,
man,
I think that I would like vote for that. I think that would be super exciting.
except I would be useless every Friday at work. What else do we have on Baku?
Okay, so this has had a Grand Prix since 2016, this track.
Okay.
The track is the Baku City Circuit.
Mm-hmm.
And this I actually like really like this track. I think it might be one of my favorites just in the terms of layout.
Uh-huh.
I feel like it's really exciting. So they start out and it's a long straight and then it
I was gonna
goes
say
directly it
that
go ahead.
straight I love, and the way they've
Yeah.
got those tents that like point up all the way down. It just
Mhm.
looks so like a
It
traditional
get
F1 vibe.
yeah. Like you just describing that literally gave me goosebumps. It really did.
Oh gosh.
No, so it's this long straight and then it goes into three 90-degree turns.
Oh
Like
god.
one after the other after the other. Actually, I'm sorry, it's four. So it's like one, two, three, four. Turns one through four are all 90 degrees, like very sharp turns.
hmm
And they're taking that first turn after that straight. So they're coming at high speeds
Oh
and then
wow.
like going directly into this turn. So you see a lot of action like on that first turn and
hmm
especially like on a race start. So we're going to get to see that like race start and then also for the sprint race,
Yeah.
like there could be some major action
Oh, I'm
on that
excited.
turn, which is super exciting. Cannot wait. And then too, so after those that kind of section of is the first sector is like very windy with those turns. Not windy, but just like very rough with those straight turns.
Okay.
And then you get into sectors 2 and 3, which is kind of winding through Old Town. And I'll talk more about this when we get into just like talking about Azerbaijan in general. But I
Okay.
always thought this track was like super picturesque with like they have like this like it almost looks like a castle
Okay. Yeah, I'm
um
like sorry, I'm
on the
zooming in
track.
on
Yeah, are
my
you looking
phone.
at pictures?
Yeah.
Yeah. So that is called Old Town Baku,
Mhm.
and those buildings are from the medieval time period.
Really? That's
Yes, and
cool.
they are actually like I'm jumping ahead, but I was real excited about this when I learned this, researching this. But they are actually a United Nations educational, scientific, and cultural organization site.
So
So
it's
it's
part of
called
the
like
UN or no?
it's called UNESCO as
Oh.
an acronym, but it stands for United Nations Educational, Scientific, and Cultural Organization, um, World Heritage Sites. And so other things that are on this list are the Taj Mahal is one of these,
Really?
Yellowstone National Park, yes, the Great Wall of China, Cinque Terre, where you're going. Aren't
Oh
you
my
going to Cinque
God.
Terre?
Yeah.
Yes, that's one of these on this
No
historical sites.
way.
So like, yes, and I'm
Okay.
like, "Oh my gosh, that is super interesting."
So
I had no
when
idea. Like I thought it was like medieval times like yeah, I
yeah.
don't know. I don't know what I thought. I thought it was just like a building that they put that looked kind of like a castle and I was like, "Oh, that's a cool vibe, like whatever." But it's actually like literally from the medieval time period.
Okay. Well, now when I'm spending
Super
two and a
cool.
half weeks in Europe and I'm taking all these
Yeah.
photos there, you can like
Yeah.
go back to the Baku intro
Yeah.
episode and you can see all my photos from there. So,
Oh my god, no, it's so exciting. But yeah, so anyways, all those sites that are on this
mhm.
list, they basically end up on this list because they're like quote unquote have outstanding universal value. So
Oh,
they're very like, long-standing, important culturally sites and this is one of them. And
that's
it's literally
cool.
on this F1 track.
That's
Like it's
insane.
part of the track. I know. I had no idea.
And
Super
it's
cool.
kind of cool also because if you start to think about it from like a country in the Middle East and stuff like that, it's it's very like progressive, but also at the same
Yeah.
time kind of like a lot of history. You know what I'm saying?
Oh my
Compared
god,
to like
100%.
a lot of the questions around like having stuff in Qatar or things like that. Not to say
Mhm.
that they don't have other issues or whatever as a country, but I just think it's super cool to have something that's like recognized by the entire world like that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So,
Oh, 100%. Yeah. I was really interested to learn that. But okay, so back to the track itself and the race. F1 has a contract to race on this track through 2024. I'm
oh,
really hoping that that gets extended because I really do enjoy this race. I enjoy the track. I think it's a good experience like to watch.
yeah.
So we'll see what happens with that. But the race itself is 51 laps. It's about 6 kilometers, which translates to 3.7 miles.
Okay.
The length is 306 kilometers, which is about 190 miles. And Charles Leclerc holds the lap record, which was a minute and 43 seconds, 0.009
Oh,
in 2019.
it's a
So,
fast. It's a fast track then, in terms of
yeah.
lap time. So, in
Yeah.
theory, then you maybe might have some traffic or no?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. No, you would. And we'll talk about what happened last year, but there was somebody got in trouble because they weren't paying attention to blue flags. Because
Who? Do
who do you think?
share. I don't know.
Who do you think?
Latifi?
No, it wasn't Latifi for once. It was Lance Stroll.
Oh, Lance.
But we'll
But
talk about that some more.
but now he's
Um,
got Alonso, so he's on the
yeah.
straight and narrow.
And
You know.
he's gonna be doing better. He's
Yeah.
gonna be doing better for sure.
Yeah.
But okay, so it's a street circuit, which we kind of already talked about. Obviously with it going through the streets of this old town and all of that. And it's the newest street circuit on the calendar, behind Singapore, which would be the second newest. So it's a fairly new. Like I said, they started racing here in 2016.
Yep.
Parts of and what's also interesting about the track
Mhm.
is that parts of the track are like wider, like that straight area.
Mhm.
You can at sometimes you'll see like three cars right next to each other
Okay.
going through that straight section. So there is a lot of opportunities to overtake, especially on that straight. But then once they start getting into the turns, and especially like the old town area,
Well, yeah, because
it gets really tight.
kind of like Monaco, you can't change how wide the street
Exactly.
is. Like, it is what it
Right.
is, you know?
100%. Yeah. Yeah. Being that you have both like a mix of that, like it being the wider straights and then the tight turns, it becomes tricky for the teams to decide if they want to choose like setups that will favor like more downforce for the turns
Hmm.
or less downforce with the straights. Like, do they want to sacrifice one or
Ooh,
the other?
that's hard.
Yeah, so it becomes tricky. And that's why again I'm like I want to see this race stay on the calendar because I feel like it's a challenge. It's not like, it's not like very straightforward.
Hmm.
Um but okay, so as far as weather for the
Okay.
weekend, now we're filming this a little bit ahead of time.
Yeah, we might
So
need to, editing Alex might
we
need to
might need
come
to
back in.
edit this and update. But as of right now, it's expected to be partly cloudy, low wait, partly cloudy and low of high. My notes don't make any sense. But so it's going to be lows of in the 50s
Okay.
and highs in the higher 60s to like low 70s.
Oh, okay. So
Um
nice. So
just yeah,
getting heat in the tires may be difficult then.
maybe an issue, especially with some of the timing. So the race starts local time at 3 p.m.
Hmm.
for in Baku.
Hmm.
It's 6 a.m. our time, so
So lovely.
get your coffee. Um, and then the sprint race is a little bit later, so it'll start their time at 5:30 p.m.
Okay. So 8:30 our time.
So it'll probably be like cooling down at least for the sprint race. So
But it's
I don't
only
know. Yeah, that
17
might be a
laps, so
challenge.
it's going to be quick.
Right.
So maybe not as much as we think, you know.
Mhm. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about what happened last year.
Okay.
So this race was later on the calendar last year.
Mhm.
It was round 8 last year.
Okay.
And at this point, like this is when it really started to, I would say, like pull away from Charles. Like he was doing really great at the beginning of the season, and this race was kind of like a turning point. I mean, there was definitely more turning points, but this was like the first one, I think.
No, but it was so early in the season. I feel like you can't say that because you were what?
Yeah.
You were like maybe last year four races in, 5 races in, maybe, right?
Mhm.
Out of 21. Well,
Yeah.
uh,
Well,
what is that mathematically then?
so it cuz this was the 8th one last
Well,
year.
you're almost a quarter of the way through the season, so I
Right.
could maybe give that to you.
Yeah. It was when I felt like I was like, "Oh no." Is like before this, I was like, "Oh no, he's going to be fine. Like he's going to win. It's going to be great." But then after this one, I was like, "Oh no, like is there going to be a problem?" Like that's how I felt about it.
Mhm.
um
I don't know.
but okay, so we had for the podium last year, we had Max first place, Checo second place and the fastest lap, and then George Russell got third. But so Charles started on pole
Mhm.
again, Mr. Saturday, like
Mr.
always starts
Saturday.
on pole. And then he right away, like as the race was starting, he lost the lead in that first corner
Mhm.
to Checo, who passed him.
Okay.
Um, and then there was 5 DNFs in this race last year.
Man, I feel like every week we've been talking lately, and there's been so many DNFs.
I know.
Like
I know.
Australia had a ton, right?
Mhm.
And then
Mhm.
what was the other one? Was it Qatar?
No, Saudi.
Saudi. That's right.
Saudi had a
Yeah.
bunch like last year, yeah. And so, okay. So the first person that DNF'd was Carlos. He was in 4th place and then basically his car just like stopped working. He had a power unit issue.
Yeah.
Um, so he doesn't continue. And then Charles. So whenever he DNF'd, that caused a virtual safety car,
Okay.
and then Charles pitted under that VSC
Mhm.
for hard tires to go the rest of the race, which was kind of like a riskier strategy because it was pretty early on in the race. Like that happened on lap 9.
Yeah.
So he was going to change his tires, go on a hard, and then last throughout the rest of the race. And this seemed to be like working out for him pretty decently. Um, because he took the lead after that. And then on lap 20, he also had an engine failure. So it was a double
Mm. Dan.
Ferrari DNF
Oh gosh,
last year. I know. I
man.
know. We're manifesting to not have a repeat of this
Yeah, let's hope.
sad scenario.
I know.
But so then also during the race, like I mentioned, there was 5 DNFs. So you had Joe who ended up pitting and then the team just retired the car. They had some kind of issues
Mhm.
and that was on lap 24. And then you had Magnussen, also the same thing, DNFing with issues to the engine on around lap 33. And then Lance, who we talked about earlier, he had gotten at this point in the race a 5-second penalty for ignoring blue flags. And the team
Mm.
called him in with an engine failure to just retire. And to me, that I was like, maybe they just did that to like save the car because they were like, okay, look, like you already have a 5-second penalty, like you're in the back, like you're not paying attention to blue flags, like just pull the car in, like we're done.
I don't know. Also, at the same time, if you have something, it can easily spiral to something way worse very quickly. And I'm wondering
Yeah,
if they were managing other things.
to
Like,
that.
yeah, like
Yeah,
if you have like a huge fire in your car, you're going to damage other things versus, okay, if we know something is slightly wrong in terms of like your cost cap, and if you're already like way far back in the field,
right.
maybe you just, you know what, this wasn't our weekend, and you just, you know,
Yeah, no, true. But so then Max eventually, wins this race by over 20 seconds
oh gosh.
to second place being Checo. And it was basically a Sunday stroll for him last year.
This,
So
yeah, oh gosh. Let's
one of his
hope.
Sunday strolls.
Okay, if Ferrari can't get it together, I just hope Alonso takes it to Max this weekend.
Yeah.
Like,
Oh, I hope so.
you know, him and Russell.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, to that point, so I guess I didn't like, and I don't really have like full blown predictions for this race, but I did read that Mercedes is afraid, slash, they're not like saying 100% yet that George might have to take a grid penalty because remember he had like his car was literally on fire in
Yes.
Australia.
Yeah.
And so I guess they haven't really been able to fix that power unit. And so they might like change it to
Mm,
another one, which would then cause him to get a grid penalty
true. But I
at
mean,
this race. So
Checo has made his way up multiple times through the field
true.
and done really well, taking even after grid penalties or, he had that real bad qualifying a couple weeks ago. So,
Mhm. Yeah.
so
So we'll see. But
interesting.
no, like you, I hope that Alonso, if it's not Ferrari, I hope it's Alonso.
I do too. I'm like, I'm just like, I'm rooting
Hmm.
for him. There's something that now that
Yeah.
he's moved over to Aston Martin, I like the
Yeah.
fire again. You know?
Oh yeah, no, like definitely when we redo our driver rankings,
Oh,
like
Alonso's gonna be
personal.
like 3.
Oh my god, yeah, for sure. He's like definitely in my top 5. Like he has moved up.
Has Lando
L-
moved since McLaren can't get it together?
You, I still feel for Lando. I still think he's like little brother vibes and
Yeah.
I still really like Lando personally.
Mhm.
So I would say he's still my number 2.
Okay. We'll see.
He's still my
Everyone,
number 2.
take note of that, and we'll rediscuss at the
We'll
end of the
see where we
season.
land.
Yeah. We'll see if he throws a
Right.
temper tantrum and Alex like out him.
Oh no. I know.
So,
Oh no. But okay, so some more just information about Azerbaijan in general
okay.
because like when I started researching this, I didn't know really I had never really thought like where's Azerbaijan? Like what's going on there? Like what tell me about
Yeah.
Azerbaijan? Like it's just like a small
It's not a
little country that
it's
you
not a
don't really
country
know
you're
about.
like, "Oh my gosh, I want to hear about," or not hear about,
Right.
but it's just it's not in your top 10.
Right. But let me tell you, I am like this place is cool. Like I think I want to go there.
What?
Seriously, it sounds amazing. Okay, so it's officially called the Republic of Azerbaijan, and it is technically part of the, I'm not going to pronounce this right, Caucasus region,
I have no
which
idea.
there's a mountain range that is called the Caucasus Mountains. And they also refer to this general region as Caucasia because it's kind of in between um, Eastern Europe and Western Asia. And so that's kind of like where we are,
So it's
which
not
it's really
really in the
interesting.
Middle East then.
No, so it's really not considered like a Middle Eastern company
Company.
country. um so it's more so like considered this Caucasian or Caucasus region, which also too the first Grand Prix that was held here was like it was technically called the European like Grand Prix of like the European something or other.
Yeah. I guess that's kind of makes
So,
all of that kind of makes sense though because it's over by Georgia
yes,
and like it's in between. It's literally like you go north and you've got like Russia
Russia,
and all of that, right? And
right.
then you go south, you've got the Middle East, and then you go kind of like right, or I guess I should say east. Sorry, that was dumb. And then you kind of, yeah, you start to run into like Asia, like
Right,
Mongolia,
right.
um, Turk, Man. I can't even say it.
Turkmenistan or
There we go.
Turk yeah,
Yeah.
Turkmenistan.
So,
Yeah, and so then there's also like Armenia's over in this area.
where's Armenia?
So, it's
Sorry.
basically
Oh yeah.
it's in between the Black Sea and the Caspian Sea.
Yeah.
Um,
Super like
but
an
yeah,
interesting place, honest or place,
I
but
know
like
exactly.
like where it's
Placement on
geographically located.
yes.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Right. Right,
Hmm.
100%. Which like to your point earlier, before I started researching this, I was like, "Oh, it's another Middle Eastern country."
Yeah, but little
Like
did
I
we
didn't know
know,
that it wasn't because
technically.
no one talks about Azerbaijan. And they
Yeah.
should be because let me tell you, it's really cool.
Okay.
And I'm about to tell you. So, they are considered a semi-presidential republic, which means they have a president and then they also have a prime minister.
Okay. So they are
And
like
they're
the US meets the UK.
right. So they have
Okay.
both. Yeah,
Interesting.
it's interesting. I'm like, okay, this is interesting. Interesting what's going on here. But so their official language is Azerbaijani,
Okay.
and that's also like what the people are referred to. So they're like Azerbaijanis, like
And
Americans,
they speak
and they
Azerbaijan.
speak Azerbaijani.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. But okay, so historically, this country is referred to as the land of fire. So this got me, I was like, oh my gosh, I need to know more.
Yeah.
So it's referred to as the land of fire, and it got this name because they have these hillsides in the country
Mhm.
that are constantly on fire. Like the fire never can be put out because there is gas seeping up through like really, really thin like limestone.
Okay.
And at some point this fire got lit and so now like you can never extinguish it because there's just this gas coming out and like the
Constantly.
fire yes constantly stays going. And
That's
so that
crazy.
area, I know, it's insane. And if you look at and I'll put pictures of this to go along with this episode because I was like fascinated by this, but it literally looks like a fireplace, like in
Okay.
built into like a hillside.
Okay.
And this area, it's called Yanar Dog, which Dag. I'm not pronouncing this right, but that translates to burning hillside.
This is crazy. Sorry.
I
Everyone, I'm
know.
like
I
not
know. I
ignoring
didn't know.
everything. I'm
I
like,
did not know anything about this. And so essentially, this has been burning continuously for over 4,000 years.
really?
And
So,
there's
how did
also,
it get start? How did it start
so
burning? Was
I,
there
I
like a
read
war?
exactly, like that was my question. So nobody really knows because it's been going for so long. So there's not like an official, like,
Yeah,
this is
like
what happened. But the histories tell that there was a shepherd that was going by and like accidentally lit a fire right there. And
hmm,
just so happened that this gas was coming up through that area and then it just now stays lit. And like you can't turn it out. It's bizarre.
that is kind of
Bizarre.
crazy. That is very
Yes.
interesting.
Yes. And so they also have an area too that's like a spring that's
Hmm.
on fire as well. And that has a different name. Like it's I'm like, whoa, this is so crazy. Um and then they also have these things called mud volcanoes,
Okay.
which is like a lot of them. So if you go to Baku, the area that has the most of these mud volcanoes is like right outside of Baku.
Hmm.
And they, fun fact, have the largest concentration of these mud volcanoes in the whole entire world are located like in this country and right
Hmm.
next to Baku. And so it's basically like a regular volcano, but they're smaller. Like they're very small and they're full of mud and not lava.
Oh,
And they just like bubble up like with this mud. Like it's bizarre.
interesting.
It's so
I can't wait to
my
see
mind
your
is blown.
Instagram post.
I know. So obviously with all of that being said, Azerbaijan is a major like crude oil producer
Hmm.
and they have a ton of oil reserves obviously. Like they've got all of this like natural gas. Like I mean,
Yeah.
it's just in this country like crazy. So also there's this area that called Neft Dazzlar. Again, I'm killing these pronunciations. Um, but it used to be an oil rig, and it had elevated walkways that were it was built out into the Caspian Sea. So there's walkways from the mainland to this oil rig. Um, and then it's been abandoned. So like people like they stopped using it as an oil rig, but locals around like 1950 started building a city on
Hmm.
top of this area. And so now it's like this floating city that's like halfway in the Caspian Sea and like you can go there, there's bakeries, there's
Is
hotels
this kind of like
on
Venice?
this like yeah, so there is an area, a part of Baku
Uh-huh.
that is like called I forget what they call it, but it's really similar to Venice. They have a different name for it and it was like Little Venice or something like
Hmm.
that. But it's kind of modeled after that. So like there's like these canals and you go and
That's
like it just
crazy.
seems I'm like, "Oh my God, I had no idea. This is crazy."
You're
But
selling me
okay,
on
so
this trip.
I know, right? Right?
Yeah.
So, all of that being said, so Baku is the capital of Azerbaijan, and it is like a super like bustling, buzzing city. And you mentioned it before, like they have all this old architecture,
Hmm.
from the medieval times, but then it's mixed in with a lot of modern architecture and like big buildings and they have a lot of it's just super interesting because like so much of like their culture and everything incorporates um like kind of Turkish, Middle Eastern
Hmm.
slash European because they're kind of in the middle.
Yeah.
And then they have this like old architecture, but then they also have this super modern architecture. So it's just like, I don't know. I was like, this is really cool.
Yeah.
This is really, really cool. Um, okay, so and we already talked about Old Town and how that's like this, World Heritage site, which is crazy. We get F1 cars like driving right by it. Like it's so interesting. It's
Oh,
just interesting. Um, but I'll put up a picture of these too. So some of the newer architecture that's in the city, there's there's three skyscrapers, which like when you're watching this race and when you're watching qualifying sprint race, all of that, I am sure we'll get like the aerial kind of
oh,
drone shots
1000%.
of these buildings, and so they call them the flame towers because again it's like the
Land of Fire.
land of fire. Yeah, so like that's all kind of like intertwined within their culture and everything. um but they have these three skyscrapers that are it's basically in their city, and they look like almost like a flame, and they're so beautiful.
Oh, I love
It's
it.
really pretty.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm excited. Now I can't wait for the
I
race.
know. I know. I was like, "Oh my god, this is so cool."
It's
But
good.
yeah, no, I'm seriously like, as we're like diving deeper into all these different cities and like different races and stuff, I'm like, oh my God, I'm adding so many different places of like where I need to go.
Oh gosh.
Cause like I would have never been like, oh, I want to go to Azerbaijan. Like, don't even know where that is.
Well, how do
Never
you
heard of
even get
it.
there? Well, I mean, you fly, but like,
Of course.
where do you fly into? Do you fly into Dubai and then down there or up there? Or like, I don't know.
To be
Do you fly
researched when
through
we plan our
Europe
trip.
and then? Oh, that's
Oh my
hilarious.
gosh. Um, But okay, just a real quick on menu stuff. We won't be eating this because we are going to be having crawfish.
Yes.
But for those of you that will be watching this, not at my house, and looking for a menu, um, these dishes sounded really good to me. So they have something called kutabi,
Mhm.
which I read that the national dish of Azerbaijan is this, and it's like a pancake, but it's stuffed, and
Ooh,
it's like a savory pancake.
like
So
a
they
crepe?
stuff them like, but it's not like folded up, like
No,
it's
I
like
know, but I'm
stuffed
saying
with inside the
it makes me think of a crepe though, because
right,
a
kind
crepe
of
you
similar
fold it up,
idea,
but yeah, but
right?
yeah.
But so
Hmm.
this is like almost like a little cake, but it's flat, and they stuff them with meat and herbs. But
Ooh,
so they're eating a lot of that. And then also dolmas, which is kind of almost like Greek, or like I've seen dolmas
yeah.
in other um cuisines, different types of places, but it's a stuffed grape leaf.
Hmm.
And then they eat a lot of kebabs too.
Ooh, I love me a kebab.
Yeah. And then this I thought was interesting. So they'll drink tea, but instead of sweetening with sugar,
Hmm.
they sweeten their tea with jams.
Ooh,
Like, yeah, so it's kind of like different fruit jams and whatever. And from what I read, they literally will make a jam out of like anything they can get their hands on,
yeah,
essentially.
that's
Because they're
cool.
making jam out of watermelon, out of rose petals, even. Like,
Hmm.
that's jams are huge for them.
Oh, that's
So,
cool.
yeah. But just, some little tidbits. I was like real excited to learn all of that because I did not know any of that. Super interesting.
Oh, 1000%. Well, I can't wait for the
Yeah,
race, and it's gonna be such a great weekend.
I know. It's gonna be so much fun.
I know. Well, should we wrap us up?
Yeah, so this has been Queens of the Paddock, an F1 podcast. You can listen to our podcast anywhere you get your podcast. We are with available with video on Spotify and YouTube. We're on Instagram at Queens of the Paddock, and we're also on Twitter.
Yes,
And yeah, that's it for us today.
I know. And you are.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Alex always
We
forgets.
can never get this right. Like it's
Ah,
always me too. Like I mess it up every time. But so my name is Alex.
and I'm Courtney, and lights out, and away we go. See
Thank you.
ya.
Bye.